Welcome to the Brainstorm episode 100. Woo! That's right. Put on the party hats. Wow. If we go back all the way back to what was this? June 14th, 2023. Our first ever topic, Apple, WWDC, Tesla and GM, and SEC versus crypto. I think that's a good tee up for episode 100 here, where maybe we kick it off with Tesla. We've got Apple about to announce. I think, are they still allowed to call it a smartphone?
We'll have to get a court ruling on that.
Yeah. And then
it looks the mock-ups look extraordinarily ugly. I'll say.
Why you don't like the island?
Just like two blocks with like a
15 cameras.
Yeah, it's almost like the parody of the Razor where they keep adding cameras. Like the 10 camera, 10 Razor camera, 10 Razor.
But
Razor.
on that, Brett, are you going to get a new iPhone?
I have upgraded my iPhone every single cycle for, I think, a decade. But you can never tell until they tell you the whiz-bang new camera they have on the thing.
And you're like,
as somebody with
children,
children,
am I going to have lo-fi memories?
Exactly. You're going to be training your future AI based upon the kind of high definitionness of these pictures you take today. But I am thinking about trying to switch to a Pixel.
Interesting. Can I save you the hassle of having to switch back to iPhone and just suggest that you don't do that?
Okay, we'll see. Maybe I'll skip this cycle. We'll see.
All right, let's dive into the main topic of today, which, Brett, you did a lot of work over the past week, and it had to take place over the last week because that's when Tesla opened up the Robotaxi app for broader download. And what happened?
Sure. So the Robotaxi app, which previously was only available via like private beta invite only, and which is the app that Sam, you and I use to ride around in Robotaxis in Austin. They released on the iOS App Store broadly. It's actually pretty clear that people weren't expecting this to happen this soon. If you look at Polymarket, there's a contract on when they will open up the Robotaxi service that was trading at the end of October. Contract was trading in the 30-ish% range and spiked to 100 on this release. So this meets the conditions of a public release of Robotaxi, and actually caught quite a few people off guard. The reason it caught people off guard is because, well, why do this if you still have safety drivers behind the wheel? Net, upon releasing it, they were the number one travel app in the US and the top 5 travel app in the iOS App Store, or top 5 overall app in the iOS App Store. So they spurred like a lot of downloads, mostly from probably Tesla fans, but the download volumes exceeded Waymo's best ever day by 6.5x. It exceeded Uber's rolling average best month by 40%. So at least demonstrated that Tesla still has a lot of distribution push that they can do, since they didn't heavily market this. It was just released on a post on X, more or less, and shows that people are interested in trying out this service. Probably the more important news, and that's interesting insofar as they are going to, I would assess, not have like a huge amount of trouble finding rider supply as they expand the service. And also over the week, Elon Musk indicated that they're going to take the safety drivers out before the end of the year. And so confidence in doing that's the real threshold step for this becoming, I think, a scalable, transformative business for them. And we'll see if it happens.
Well, there's also the Musk tweet saying drivers out by end of year.
Yeah, that's what I just said. Sam was clearly paying attention to something in the other room And I went on too long. Next time my answer will be shorter so that you pay attention to the entire answer.
Do you think that will happen?
I would set the over under at February 14th, Valentine's Day. What do you take?
Why you're just pulling why February 14th?
Well, okay, so I think they probably, before taking the safety driver out, have to push a new version of the software, and I think that they are close to pushing the new version. Within the next month or two, they'll do it, and then validation tests take probably on the order of 3 months. So I put it at 5 months. And that's roughly 5 months. And then Valentine's Day is convenient. Because the other interesting thing about looking at the Robotaxi app was the 10th most downloaded ride-hail app day of all time on this random Thursday. The other top 9 are basically New Year's Eve, Halloween, St. Patrick's Day, and then a UFC fight that did a bunch of volume. So basically evenings where people go out to bars and drink a lot. And it made me think about kind of how, meeting surge demand is not only important for kind of having a complete service and so people can rely on you for their commute, but it also, that is where these companies acquire most of their customers, or the biggest customer acquisition days are when they can meet that abnormal like spike in demand. And the only way to do that is if you can motivate in supply so that, and even on New Year's Eve, it's hard to get an Uber, but I'm sure it'll be impossible to get a Waymo. And so the completeness of Tesla's package is going to be not just taking the drivers out, but also allowing Joe Schmo Tesla owner to stick their FSD capable vehicle onto the service during surge.
I think that surge point is super interesting. It also kind of ties into probably something we got wrong on EV range like 8 years ago at this point, right? Which is, it's like no one ever needs peak range, but it's like meeting that quote surge demand is super important from consumer perspective. Were you surprised that Uber? I was surprised just at the Uber chart that so many people are still downloading this app. Like, are people using it, deleting it, and then re-downloading it? What's happening?
I'm not sure exactly how Sensor Tower collects the data, but my suspicion is when you upgrade phones, maybe that counts as a new download.
I don't know, because you have it. It's you save it in your cloud. So when you reconfigure your new phone, it's updating from your cloud settings. So I don't think it would be new Uber downloads from new phones. It's probably Uber Eats. I mean, Uber's built out a ton of new verticals within the Uber app, which is probably why you still see continued growth.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at the data, Uber has their churn, at least measured on a daily actives to downloads basis and doing kind of cohort analysis, their churn has continued to diminish over time. So they are, the people who are downloading it are continuing to use it. And there are still people out there. I mean, they're at a certain age, you have to be at a certain age to qualify in to use Uber. Oh, do you know what, though, Nick, if somebody goes from a Pixel to an iOS device, then that will count as a download. As in, so there is like some degree of like upgrading phones and.
But that would be think about it. That would explain a lot of downloads for every single app. So it's not unique. It's not like this is a unique case to Uber. It's
but Uber's an app you're certainly going to download, as opposed to like long.
Or maybe it's
app where you're not like, if you forget about it, it's gone forever.
Maybe it's people downloading it for Waymo.
Could be.
That could be. Well, but there hasn't been a spike in Uber downloads. If you look at the trajectory, it's basically like, an app in somewhat of maturity. And I think that the other like little piece of work I did is to show kind of Uber's churn has been reducing over time. So that the Uber download, the average Uber download, you would assert from the daily actives to downloads basis yields Uber 1,000 miles of travel for that person, roughly. And that's been increasing over time. Whereas Waymo is still in heavy churn mode and doesn't show a trajectory of improvement. So a Waymo download seems to lead to 60 miles of travel that they're providing to somebody.
Which I think you have a lot of people traveling into the cities where Waymo operates. They use Waymo as, oh, this is really interesting.
Like a
novelty. And then they leave and they're like, why do I still have this? I'm never going back to Scottsdale or Austin.
Or they just forget about it. Yes. Yeah. Maybe they do use it again when they go back. I mean, by all reports. And me personally, I like Waymo. I mean, it's a very nice service. And even though I'm in the area, I can't take it to the airport. There's lots of limitations on the service that then make it hard to be your thing that you rely on, even if you live in the catchment areas.
Okay.
And that's also kind of like the indication here for Tesla, for Robotaxi. Tesla is still limited to San Francisco and Austin, like a fewer number of geographies than Waymo. So it really is just an indication that people are interested, they're passionate about it, they want to experiment with the service when it's readily available. And their ability to service these customers is quite narrow still.
Okay, and then when Tesla removes safety drivers, do you think that is the start of rapid expansion, or you think that's the start of phase 2 of cautious testing that then, is maybe 3 to 6 months ahead of rapid scaling?
No, I think that's the start of rapid scaling. I think I don't know why you would hold back at that point. When do each of you think they're going to release safety drivers? Sam, the expert, and Nick, the person who's heard us argue about this for years.
7 years.
I think
same argument. 7 years.
7 years.
That's how long I've been listening to this.
That's fair point. But you can't fault someone for continuing to make progress towards an end goal, whereas everyone else has quit. I think Q1 is the right time frame. Right. It's like Elon time. You got to push people. You do need the release. You need the validation. It's still unclear, right? They said they're increasing their fleet by 50% in Austin. And so, prior to that, the reported number was something like 7,000 miles of data collected. You have to imagine, to remove safety drivers, they're going to want a lot more. I'd say probably, is it fair? Maybe 2 orders of magnitude more data than that to really be comfortable with it. And maybe they can be safe with that because of the fleet of vehicles and they know what's going to be happening, or the extent that it's rolled out in SF. But that's kind of how I've been thinking about it.
Yeah, it would be interesting to approach it from how many miles do we think they need before they could statistically be confident that they're safe. The thing that, because when Waymo, got commercial licensing in California, I didn't think they had statistically enough data to really know how safe they were. You can imagine, like in drug trial design, depending on how powerful your effect is, you can get by with less data, still saying, I assert that I'm better than human. And then here, it's kind of like maybe you can see the shape of your risk profile. And you can say, oh, I can see the entire risk profile, even including these long tail events that I can't yet measure, is kind of to the right of normal driving. And so maybe there's ways that via simulation and looking at kind of the overall curve, you can make assertions that you're safer. And I think 1Q or 2Q, even a year from now, from a present value of Tesla perspective, it actually doesn't matter at this point. It matters if it's 7 years, which is Nick's assertion over here.
I don't think it's going to be 7 years. I was giving you a frame of reference of how many years I've heard it's going to be next year.
Yeah, but we've switched. We've gone from next year to this year. Although Brett just introduced.
No, technically Brett is into next
year.
Yeah, Brett is into next year.
I think there are technologies that are forever out and to the right. Like quantum computing, I think, is in that land. Fusion has been in that land, and in some ways the wager we've made against the market is that, Robotaxi on vision-only sensors on commercially available vehicles is not in that land. It's going to commercialize. I think there is wildly abundant evidence that that's true, that we're going to cross the threshold, and we're going to cross it, likely, very likely in the next 12 months. Let's put it that way.
So then, question, right? Another piece of Tesla Elon news, $1 trillion-ish pay package. Do you think then that it's like 3 years from now, people are like, wow, I can't believe they just gave Elon $1 trillion?
I mean, I think it's worth it to have him engaged. And it's all of these headline numbers are conditioned on the company doing unprecedented levels.
But that's what I'm
growth.
saying. It's like, if you look at our model and Robotaxi works in the way we think it will, it's like they should clear these hurdles.
Yes, I think they will.
Yeah.
I think he will, he's not getting paid $1 trillion cash. He's getting additional stock, which gives him additional kind of voting control over the company. And so you should think about it not as the dollar figure, but how much control has Elon earned of Tesla's strategic direction. And the difference is, it's the difference between, kind of like, hey, we've delivered Robotaxi, now let's just execute on like maximizing cash flow out of that, and suddenly we're doing buybacks and paying out dividends. Or, hey, we've delivered Robotaxi, so now let's push
Optimus,
most but not all of the chips into Optimus and create kind of a sustainable, abundant future for the world. I really think that's like the forking path here. Mm-hmm. You could have a wildly valuable company that was satisfied to just produce a bunch of Robotaxis and scrape cash flow off it and penetrate everywhere in the world. And I think it requires the continued mania, urgency, and insane ambition of Elon to actually deliver and dominate the humanoid robot market. And, it is a bigger opportunity, frankly. So I think you're buying the option value on that, and the option value on him pushing the company into that. And so even relative to kind of like this value creation event that we think Robotaxi is going to occur or unveil for Tesla, the trillion should be measured against the enterprise value creation of Optimus.
So then we're going to keep punting Nick's response to the answer as we get interesting things out of Brett here. Okay, we currently have the crazy CapEx cycle going into compute. Let's say 5 years from now, Robotaxi up and running at scale. Is everyone like, oh my God, I can't believe Tesla's not free cash flow, like that they've reinvested.
Oh, because they're continuing to throw money into compute.
That they've reinvested singularly more than this whole cycle combined into compute for Optimus?
I think there's a few reasons that wouldn't occur. One, Robotaxi should be so cash flowy for them, it's almost impossible for them to put the money into. We're talking at least on our modeling hundreds of billions of dollars per year in cash flow. Like you cannot possibly, as a single entity, invest that much multiple years in a row in compute. And I think that, maybe you can, but maybe it doesn't manifest in data centers. You're investing it and building out the actual robots, which have kind of the inference chip on device, and they're out there learning in the world. And so the challenge, I think, with the data center build out is, or the overarching concern is you have these giant buildings filled with lots of chips. And at some point you skate over the edge of you have too many buildings and chips, and they're not much good for anything else. And so then suddenly, you've spent $40 billion building a building and it turns out it's worth 20. That's a bad trade. With the robots themselves, if you're doing your training on the end asset, then at least it's out there picking up trash for people, and you can generate service revenue off it. So I think that the way in which the build out moves through kind of these inference chips will probably be more healthy, but I think they are going to be constrained by factors other than capital in terms of pursuing Optimus. It's not going to be cash flow constraint. It's going to be, can we get these things working well enough to sell them in enough to like get the virtuous cycle going? Yes, you can throw lots of money at compute trying to do that, but the cash flow of Robotaxi is well in excess of what you could meaningfully output into chips.
Nick, answer the question.
I forgot what the question was.
Drivers out, win.
Oh, I would go back to, I think, one part of your answer, Brett, which I don't necessarily think it matters when driver is out in Austin, and to me it's just a part of the story. And if you have drivers out in Austin, then when you go and launch in Miami, you're going to need drivers in. So it's just a part of how you have to launch this program, it seems.
Have you ever been to Florida?
Yeah,
they just let you do
anything.
I
lived there for 3 years.
Yes, exactly. You can just do anything there. You could
sure.
stick an alligator behind the wheel.
Oh, but okay. So Miami, bad example. New York City, you're going to need drivers. My question is more, the story in some ways, when we talk about it, it seems like we talk about it and then we have this moment in time where the business inflects massively when drivers can, unleash their cars onto the road. And I maybe take a more conservative approach where I don't necessarily think there's going to be a hockey stick moment just because of how we're seeing this launch currently. I think it'll be just a steady ramp and it will be a phenomenal business, but I think it will look more like a steady ramp of you have to go city by city and then unlock unless something drastically changes. And it sounds like, I think they are trying to reshape the regulatory landscape from the top down at the federal level. And I think that's probably more important than driver in, driver out, this city or that city. It's, when can you actually unlock this from all of the loopholes and hoops you have to jump through now to be able to go and put this service, because it works, right? Like you both were there with Frank. It works. Everyone knows it works. Waymo's been doing it for a while. Tesla's doing it now. So it's happening. But the question is, how do you go from these small cities, or not, they're not small cities, but these programs that are small now to nation? And I think it's more from a regulatory framework than just getting it to work.
But I think a mistake that I think everyone is making is misunderstanding the size of the market, even in the individual cities, as you get into the $1 a mile range. And so and I think in their announced plans, they've said they're going to be able to hit 50% of the population by, Sam, did they? I think they said some date.
End of year.
So they're going to be in states that allow them to hit 50% of the population. We think as you go to $1 a mile, this is $1 trillion market, right? And so even if you're offsides in New York, can't go in New York. Okay, that's like you can't, you have to have somebody pump your gas in New Jersey. It's dumb. It'll erode faster than the, somebody pumps your gas in New Jersey thing. But there will be plenty of like places to put output of the factory to kind of service this robotaxi demand that I think will be unveiled. And these download numbers are partly testament to that.
But you also, there's probably a massive caveat, and we'll be in 50 or states that represent 50% of the population. They're already in Texas and California. So what's that? That's like a quarter of the U.S. alone, but they're not.
Yeah, but in a lot of states, like license to operate in the state confers license to operate in any city. Yeah. So there are special purpose cities where they've tried to defend their taxi franchise against Uber, and they've imposed all these regulations that are kind of annoying and actually cause more cost to travel for people.
Yeah. And I agree with you on end market size. I've also been listening and watching the research for that 7 years as well. And I know how much work has been put into it. And I fully believe in the end target. I just think the slope is, call it this instead of that.
My belief is that I think people also over-index on Uber, Waymo, where Waymo has severely restricted supply of vehicles for a long time. They're still trying to ramp it. They've done so for somewhat obscure or obfuscated reasons. Like, we think they might be gross profit negative per mile. They have high churn rate, as I said. They have a lot of maintenance, I think recurring maintenance they have to do on the vehicles. So it's operationally hard to scale it. And Tesla should be in a very different spot than Waymo. Literally, we were in Austin and the vehicle drives off the factory and drives off without a driver behind it, to go to a parking lot to then be sold to a customer. But if it can just go directly into commercial service, that's your ability to turn a switch and be like, okay, we're going to flood this market with 50,000 taxis, is substantially different. And by the way, we're going to do all of Texas now. We start in Austin and then just it kind of one of those viral outbreak kind of movies where they show the overhead map of the spread. I imagine something like that, where it's just the entire US gets infected.
Okay. Last question here. Well, and then a last question for Nick. Okay. US consumption, household consumption, right? You look at the categories, housing, transportation, clothing, yada, yada, yada. It's those buckets stay roughly the same on a percentage basis, right? They're fairly robust. We're about to cut the cost of transport dramatically. So are people just going to take way more rides and spend the same amount on transportation? Are they going to move further out? Or is this going to be a fundamental shift in that bucket with excess spilling over into other categories? Nick, you just shook your head no. So you give us your opinion.
Well, I think, and you may have the answer to this. What are, one in the US, the car is it represents freedom for people, right? We've been brainwashed by years and years of programming to believe that if you own a car, you have ultimate freedom in the US, and great job by Big Car for doing so. And I think the idea that just because it's cheaper, because there's the cost and then there's the convenience of accessing that cost. As in, I want to go right now to the grocery store. Is it more convenient for me to just walk to my car and drive to the grocery store than call the car, have it come get me, then I have to call another one or have it wait there? That to me is the big hurdle. And that's something where you have to change consumer preference. You have to rewire everyone's brain to be you actually don't need a car anymore because the cost is so much lower. But then people are going to go, yeah, the cost is lower, but I won't have access to the car. I'm going to have to always be waiting for it. And I can't just get in, getting in your car and being able to go. Again, we've been brainwashed to that's the ultimate sign of freedom. And so I think that's going to be really hard to erode just because the cost is cheaper. And so that's where
I think you're right and you're wrong. As in, I 100% agree that it's not just a cost issue; it's a defrictioning issue,
right.
And people will in all kinds of circumstances effectively pay more to maintain an old habit than do something that's even better for less. And I think that it's a very different market with abundant supply. As in, the difference between a $3 a mile ride hail service and a $1 a mile ride hail service is indicates the number of vehicles that you have out there. And so the 5 to 10 minute wait for an Uber becomes a 1 to 2 minute wait. And so it onboards people not just on hey, it's lower cost, but it also feels less frictionful. And then the way off, depending on the city, is when you get there, are you having to figure out parking? And are you, that's a big deal certainly in Los Angeles, it's like, oh, I have to go to this place. The parking lot there sucks. I'm going to try to street park. I spend an extra 5 minutes trying to street park. I'm going to illegally park and take the probabilistic odds that I get a parking ticket. Like there's a whole like raft of factors that are less convenient. But it's like, if you have a car seat, are you going to want to like put your car seat into these cars? Probably not. I think there's lots of people who will be off sides of the market for a little while as its supply builds out. But there is, on a pure financialist basis, as you get down into the 50 cents a mile, that's like almost the cash cost of running a car that you've fully paid off. So the marginal person stops buying a car, and people are more likely to just leave their car in the garage and go on the service. And I think, Sam, to your question, I think that you will spend roughly the same bucket amount as percent of personal consumption on transportation, but you'll just end up a lot more in point-to-point travel. You're not going to take public transit. Why would you bother? It's like just as expensive per mile, and you have to deal with other people. You're not going to take the hour-and-a-half flight because that requires 3 hours all in airport and everything. You're just going to get in a Robotaxi and go. And so kind of there's going to be this, you're going to choose to move out of town because the commute is actually something that you can work during the commute, as opposed to before where it's like, oh, I have to like eat, I turn my brain to mush listening to podcasts like this because of the length of my commute instead of working. So I think that people will make choices around transportation where they end up traveling more miles and end up with same share of consumption income against it. But I think the capital mix that people have will change. As in, right now, people have, if you buy a new car, you have $50,000 worth of capital like soaked up in that car. You're taking a loan against it. So it's not just the kind of the ongoing amortized cost of that, but the kind of amount of savings you have to dump into that category. And I think that frees up and goes somewhere else to a humanoid robot down the road. And that's how kind of like the mix changes.
So the world's more connected than ever. And at the same time, we'll be more isolated than ever until the Tesla Robotaxi dating app comes out, where you get to share a one-way ride date.
Oh gosh, I need the app that allows me to avoid the dating app ride cars.
Nick, final question. All right, 100 episodes in, are we doing episode 101?
We'll let the comments tell us.
All right. There you go. It may have been a good run.
You got to go for 1,000, at least 1,000.
That's so long. Maybe someone floated $1 trillion pay proposal for the next 10 years of episodes, we'd engage.
Yeah, it's between you and the South Park guys.
Exactly. All right. It's on you, commenters, on whether or not there's going to be an episode 101.
Oh, and we should 100 episodes in. One shout out we should give is to Crypto Montreal. She, I don't know who you are, but you always repost our stuff. You always have very nice things to say. So thank you. I do notice it, and I try to like as many as I see.
And of course, the public.
You feel seen.
Public's produced.
Yes, and public, of course.
Made it all.
But Crypto Montreal, they're special. They're very nice.
That's right. Flattery works.
Yeah.
All right. See everyone maybe next week.
See ya.